quick content note here before we begin this episode of What Am I Rolling? This episode's one-shot, The Last Tea Shop, is a solo TTRPG where players run a tea shop on the border of the living and the dead. Specific content warnings for this game include death, dying and variations thereupon, feelings of being lost and loneliness, memory loss, and mentions of gambling. So, if you're not in the right headspace just now, please feel free to stop listening and come back if or when you're ready. Thanks for listening, and stay safe, my friends. Hello, and welcome to What Am I Rolling, a twice-monthly RPG one-shot podcast, hosted by me, Fiona. This week I'm playing The Last Tea Shop, a solo journaling game about tea and conversation. Written by Spring Villager, The Last Tea Shop lets players run a tea shop on the border of the living and the dead. The recently deceased visit for one last hot drink before their long journey into the great beyond. Over a cup of tea, the player chats to the visitor about their life and helps them prepare for their trip into the lands of the dead, recording their thoughts, fears, dreams, and hopes for posterity. The game finishes when the mysterious Veiled One comes to visit. You can find out more information about The Last Tea Shop and grab your own copy of the complete version on the Spring Villager's itch.io store. I'll add links to it on the What Am I Rolling website and in this episode's show notes. So here's how The Last Tea Shop works. Like most solo TTRPGs, all you need to play is some quiet time, a way to make notes, a D6 to help make some choices on random tables and narrative trails, and, optionally, a cup of tea. So whilst I do go through the rules whilst playing The Last Tea Shop, here's a few key things to note at the top of the episode. Setting up the stall, finding affinities, tea supplies and recipes are all done through rolling the d6 a number of times on various tables and noting down the results. Once that is done, the player establishes the starting narrative path by choosing either the dice trail or the lantern path. They will then roll the d6, and this result will indicate the number of days that pass before the first visitor arrives. The player will look down their chosen path until they find the entry next to the number rolled, and this will be the first visitor to the stall. If there is a symbol next to the visitor's name, they may come with a gift or have an effect on the game, which the player should take note of when responding to the prompts. Once the visitor's identity has been revealed, the player should then establish the day's atmospheric weather and visitor's emotional state by rolling 36 on the respective tables before playing out the question ritual. As the player prepares the tea, they will ask the visitor a question, either one from the question prompts or make up one of their own. The visitor's response should take into account their emotional state. For every visitor, other than the first, the player must then ask, "How did you know my last customer?" and record how the visitor's response transforms or eases things. The player then serves tea and asks a final question as the visitor drinks. This time, any effects from the chosen tea recipe should be taken into account when recording the visitor's response. When the tea is finished, the player bids the visitor farewell and notes the visitor's state upon leaving the stall. On subsequent days, the player will continue to roll the d6 and add the result to the day's total and keep consulting the current path to learn who arrives at the stall. When days reach 24 or more, the Veiled One arrives. As the Veiled One departs, the final question, what happens next, will be asked. One last thing before we begin. Naturally, there are times in this one-shot where the players and myself, mostly myself, get the rules wrong or forget something plot-wise. Whilst we always endeavour to stick to the rules wherever possible, at the end of the day, we all make mistakes, and what matters most is that everyone enjoys themselves. So, Sit back, grab some Earl Grey, and let's play The Last Tea Shop. So, we are looking at The Last Tea Shop, a journaling game for 1 or 2 players by Spring Villager. You run a tea shop on the border of the living and the dead. The recently deceased visit for one last hot drink before their long journey into the great beyond. Time here is strange. Days and memories blur. No one visited yesterday, you're sure of that. Someone passed last week, but you can't recall their face. The fog thins. A figure approaches. You stoke the fire. So what's interesting about this game, it reminds me quite a lot of a book I read a little while ago by Becky Chambers. Becky Chambers is known for the Wayfarer series, but she's got a new series out called Monk and Robot. And I read the first one in that, which is A Psalm for the Wild Built, which was like a solar punk novella. And it's all about this idea of a tea merchant going from village to village, listening to people's problems, and then, as a solution, would give them a cup of tea of some sort, which feels incredibly British, even though I know Becky Chambers is American. So when I saw this, I thought, perfect, because I've just moved to a different country and, maybe just need to center myself and ground myself. And so why not do a very simple, straightforward solo RPG, as always, to tide us over to the next one shot. The Last Tea Shop is a game about tea and storytelling. Set up your stall and wait for visitors to emerge from the mist. Over cups of tea, talk to visitors about their lives and help them prepare to travel into the lands of the dead. Record their thoughts, fears, dreams, and hopes in your journal for posterity. Conversations reveal links between visitors. The rules in this book describe solo play, and there's variations for a 2-player version at the back. So what we will need is some quiet time, a way to take some notes, which we'll probably do by just voicing them out loud for podcast reasons, a D6, which I have, and then it says tea, in brackets, optional, but recommended. So I will follow that rule immediately. So how the game works is this. We've got a game overview. Answer the following questions to the setup. So where is a tea shop located? What special affinities does your stall have? What supplies are in your pantry? And which path do visitors follow to reach your shop? So those are the setup ones, and there's some more details in that in a moment. The game plays over several rounds. Each turn, someone arrives at the stall and you play out a scene. We'll see some pages for later details. We've got a roll for how many days passed. This reveals your first visitor. Roll for the weather, which reflects the visitor's emotional state. Prepare the tea and ask your first question. Serve the tea and ask your last question. Take any tea effects into account. For the next couple of visitors, repeat the process, but introduce one more question. Ask the visitor, how did you know my last customer? Repeat until the veiled one departs or you reach some other ending. And that's it. That's pretty much as straightforward as we need to get to. Oh, and look at that. There's some random tables as well. Perfect. So, let's set up the shop. The shop is in a quiet place, often cloaked in mist or light rain. There is a special feeling here. Moments stretch and fade. This is a space for communion and release. Consult the tables below to establish where your shop is located. Either choose a location or use the following random method. The first die result points to one of the named groups below, and the second points to a specific location. Okay, well, let's do that then. I'm going to get out my D6 whilst I'm here. There we go. I've got one with some cherry blossoms on it. All right, let's do it. Okay, a 4. 4 says fresh and salt. Fresh and salt. Let me roll for the second one. It's a 2. Beside a stream in a mountain pass. Okay. Describe this place on the stall sheet noting any local ingredients. Write as little or as much as feels right. You might even draw your shop. So it says, in terms of local ingredients, mountain daisy. Ooh. So my tea stall is set beside a stream in a mountain pass. The sound of the water sort of gently in the background. You can hear the gurgles and the eddies spool going over rock and moss. There is a view to the actual mountain looking up, looming over. Sometimes you can't see the top because of the mist, and it's protected from the wind a little, because obviously mountain passes you could have proper gusts of wind through, especially with particularly stormy weather. But it's quite calm here, next to the stream, again with that noise of the burbling brook. The flowers near here are rather beautiful. Obviously we have mountain daisies, but all sorts of variations and different colours depending on the seasons and the weather. I try and collect as much as I can and put it in little canisters as a way to show, and if people wish to take some with them, they can. I don't charge for it. It's just a little memento of the time they spend with me. The mountain daisy is obviously the most common here, and its smell is so sweet, like petrichor, the smell of water hitting dirt and then resting after a rainstorm. There are other flowers, as I said, and each one of those smells slightly different, an unusual range of smells perhaps. Sometimes you could swear that they smell like freshly baked biscuits, or ozone, like a sort of smell you get after a lightning strike somewhere. The soft, sort of faint smell of smokiness from a fire. If anything, if you had, say, like a Dulux painting chart, maybe those names you would see on the different paints, maybe you'd use those to describe the smells of the different flowers here, and then the different ingredients that go into the teas. Finding affinities. You have a special connection to certain aspects of reality. Sometimes these affinities are physically present in the tea shop. Others relate to atmospheric or astronomical phenomena. More still are abstract or esoteric. Your relationship with these entities or properties may influence conversation and scenes. Lean into this as much or as little as you like. Choose one of the groups below, roll a d6 to find your first affinity, and then choose another group or roll again, and this is your second affinity. On your stall sheet, briefly describe how your affinities are a part of this place. You might treat them separately, or fold them together. If it feels like you need it, add a third affinity into the mix. Alright, so from the choices here, I realise I didn't say it for the other one, but I'll say it here. We've got creatures, objects, phenomena, elements, weave, temporality. Those are 6 categories. I'm going to roll my d6. Oh, we got 5. Ooh, weave. Nice. Then we have look, daydream, secrets, melody, illusions, boundaries. Oh, I like it. It's different. As it said, abstract, esoteric. 4. Melody. That's actually probably one I wouldn't have picked, actually. I found the others more interesting, but actually, that's nice. I could do something with it. Around the tea stall is a number of curtains, blinds, but they are made from all kinds of different fabric woven together. Scraps here, huge pieces there, bits of rug, but all of it seems like deliberate. seems important, as if this is where it's meant to be. I'm able to raise and lower these curtains to give us some protection from the weather, if needed. Some of them are more threadbare than others, so the sun can shine through and create beautiful, sort of, almost like stained glass paintings, but obviously made out of weave and cotton and fabric. I have some chimes by the entrance to my stall, and when someone passes through them, they, whether deliberately or not, the chimes will indicate a person has arrived and is in need of my help. It's a very gentle melody, and it just adds to the soundscape of the bubbling brook and the gentle breeze, and how time here is both fleeting and eternal. Tea supplies and recipes. There are different types of tea, each with a unique fragrance and taste and effect. You can brew gumboot tea anytime, but others require specific ingredients. Brewing a pot of tea consumes one supply. Start with 3 supplies. To find your starting supplies, add 1 serving of each local ingredient to the pantry section of your stall sheet. Roll for additional items on the common ingredients until you have 3 supplies. Okay, so what did I have? So I had Mountain Daisy as 1. It says common ingredients. Roll a 6-sided dice, then roll it again. The first dice points to the table columns, and the second one points to a specific affinity. All right. Oh, I rolled a 6. Okay, so it's the second column. And in this column, we've got Ancient Seashell, Kawa Leaf, Giant Puffball, Ginkgo Leaf, Feather Moss, and then, of course, Chamomile. Definitely not chamomile. Okay. I got a 5, so Feather Moss. Okay. Next will be our final ingredient, so let's try that. Got a 1 this time, so this is the first column. And in this column, we've got sea salt, dry sage, quart crystal, bird nest fungi, reindeer lichen, and bright gumdrop. All right. 2, dry sage. Gotta be honest, that sounds rubbish. All right, so my supplies are Mountain Daisy, feather moss, and dry sage. There are 2 ways to replenish supplies. Some visitors gift common or even rare supplies. Once per game, you can forage a local ingredient between visitors. Describe this foraging expedition on your stall sheet journal. There is also one that says rare ingredients, which doesn't have a number assigned to it, but then in it we have Cloud Dew, Mountain Daisy, which is what I got, Snowdrop Petals, Beard Lichen, Stargrass, and Shaggy Moss. Oh, this is really cool. There's like a list of recipes we can do. Oh, so we've got gumboot tea, which is something we could always do because there's no special ingredient required. And it just says, warms the soul. We've got tea of mirth, an hour spent laughing at everything and nothing. Memory draft, relive a memory in vivid detail. Comforting brew, create a safe space, ease what ails you. Distance tea, drink to calm a difficult memory. Rainbow tea, fills the room with fascinating lights and colours. And then there's some special ones as well. Cloud tea, which changes the weather to conditions of your choosing. Draft of recall, summon the last visitor back to the shop, fold them into the rest of the scene. Celestial tea, heavenly wheels turn. The drinker has a great revelation. And then tea of return. Visitor may return to the land of the living if they choose. Oh, wow. And each of these teas requires one of the ingredients that I've picked up. So currently, the ones I can brew are the gumboot tea, because that's no special ingredient required, tea of mirth, because that requires feather moss, comforting brew with the dried sage, and then the specialty is the cloud tea, the mountain daisy you need for that. Nice. And then there's a whole list of presumably people that come here. I've got a list of between 1 to 23 people, and they're split into Dice Trail and Lantern Path. And then at the end, it says a Veiled One. And each of the sort of people, visitors, they have like a little symbol next to them, which I assume will come up during play. Playing the game. Once you knew many routes between the lands of the living and the dead. Nowadays, your memory is hazy, and the knowledge has slipped away. You recall just 2 paths. It says, prepare real-world tea for yourself. Now establish the starting path. Consider the phrases Dice Trail and Lantern Path. Which do you prefer? This is how your first visitor travels to the shop. If neither phrase resonates, roll a d6. Odds indicate dice, and even signifies lantern. Record the starting path on your stall sheet. Unless the game tells you otherwise, subsequent visitors will also come from this path. I think Lantern Path. Because Dice Trail, fine, but Lantern Path, that feels more of a journey to me. Okay, days and visitors. So roll a d6. This is the number of days that pass before your first visitor arrives. The table on the facing page represents the Dice Trail and the Lantern Path as columns. Look down your starting path until you see the entry next to the number rolled. Oh, okay. This is your first visitor. If there is a symbol next to the visitor's name, look up the Gifts and Effects table. Record how many days pass along with the first visitor on your stall sheet, along with any gifts and effects. Then turn the page and establish the weather and play your first question ritual. On subsequent days, roll a d6 and add the result to the day's total. Consult the current path to learn who arrives. Okay, so straightforward enough. Okay, so we're not going to visit... Okay, so we're not going to have all 23 people unless I roll incredibly badly. That's good. Okay. The Gifts and Effects table, we've got an asterisk will not drink your tea, a fan type symbol which indicates gifts of random common ingredient, a slightly... almost like flower, like a blooming flower, gifts of random rare ingredient, and then almost like a big sort of starburst. Roll the next weather twice. A sort of almost like cross type thing. Add 2 to the results of the next day roll. Ooh, and then there's almost like a wave symbol, which indicates switch path for the next visitor. And then like a double S, which consult the hidden paths. Ooh, okay. That's quite fun. Let's start it then, shall we? So I'm going to roll the d6, and that'll be the number of days before the first visitor. 5. So starting on the Lantern Path, we do 5 days, and we get a visitor called the Tailor. And they have a cross next to them, which is add 2 to the next day roll. Okay. Right, let's establish the weather, because that's the next thing. So roll a d6 when a new visitor arrives, then roll it again. First dice points to one of the tables below, and the second points to a row within today's atmospheric weather and the visitor's emotional state. Right, yes, so we've got 2 sort of columns which have 2 columns within them. So 1 to 3, and then 4 to 6. 5, so go to 4 to 6. In the atmospheric bit of the column for this one, we've got relentless rain, close sea green clouds, low red tinged clouds, blue skied and clear, gentle sunbeams, warm golden light. And emotion, we have exhaustion, regret, frustration, relief, calm, and hope. I rolled a 3, so we have, low red tinge clouds and frustration. So that's what we've got for this particular visitor, the Tailor. Consult recipes and prepare a tea you have supplies for. As you prepare tea, there is time to ask the visitor a question. Choose a question prompt from the facing page or make up one of your own. Write an evocative response in the journal section of your character sheet, taking into account the visitor's emotional state. If this is your first visitor, skip to serving tea. Otherwise, ask, how did you know my last customer? If the moment seems right, weave an affinity into the situation. Describe in your journal how this transforms or eases things. Serve the tea. Now ask another question as the visitor drinks. This time, take any tea effects into account when journaling the visitor's response. When the tea is finished, bid your visitor farewell. In your journey, describe the visitor's state upon leaving the store. When the days reach 24 or more, the Veiled One arrives. Follow the question ritual, and as the Veiled One departs, ask one final question. What happens next? Oh, and then we've got a list of 20 questions here. So I will maybe roll for them. That might be more interesting than me picking. So we've got the Tailor, who's come seeming very frustrated, and the clouds are sort of red and tinged. I'm going to make tea for them, but as I prepare the tea, I need to ask them a question. So let's look at the question prompts, what I'm going to ask. A 10. You sought something. What did you seek and why? This person, this Tailor, comes in. Their shoulders looking incredibly up and tight. You can see a crease of annoyance on their face. It's almost as if they don't wish to stop here. That their body is failing them and that they have to rest even for a moment and would have picked anywhere but here if they could. So, as I sit and watch them come, I sense this anger, this sort of unsettledness. I ask them the question, you sought something. What did you seek and why? And they begin to tell me about a fabric. A beautiful, highly valued fabric which would sparkle in any light, no matter the light source. And they had been commissioned in order for royalty, a high duke or duchess, it doesn't matter, for a special event happening. And they knew that this would be the perfect fabric for it, but try as they might, they could not find it, or enough of it. They sort of looked to the patches along my curtains, and whilst there's a moment where they sort of admire it but say this would not have worked, once you've cut such a fabric, it is obvious it can't match up with the patterns, the sparkle. Once you've cut the fabric, it needs to be so precise, otherwise it loses its magic. And so in the end, this individual, this Tailor, could not take the order. They started to doubt their abilities, even though the order itself was just to make something beautiful. Their want to impress, to have a high standard, pinning all their hopes and dreams on this particular order, to get what? Maybe acclaim, reputation, more orders in future, repeat business, or just a sense of being able to create something, but feeling that they are being limited by their own... what's the word? They are holding themselves back, they're getting in their own way, rather than just trusting the process. The tea, what can I give them? Sure. I'm going to give them a tea of mirth. I'm going to spend my feather moss to give them a cup of tea of mirth, because you know when someone's being silly, you know, when they are so frustrated that they can't see past themselves, really what they need, as well as sort of understanding and being sympathetic, sometimes you just need them to snap out of it. So having an hour spent laughing at everything and nothing, I think that works. So I use up my feather moss and brew a tea of mirth. I like to imagine that the feather moss is, whilst it's mossy and green, it is so light and delicate. It almost has those, like the follicles, I think that's the word, of like feathers. You know, that's what it looks like. And I get to ask another question as I give this tea. I rolled a 2. So I ask the question as this person drinks their tea, so, where did you live? Which seems so, like, out of the blue as a question to this person who's been so pent up. They start describing a coastal seaside village with a little fishing industry, 2 piers that you could walk along, the smell of sea salt, the cawing of seagulls. And they recount tales of when they used to live there, opening their shop, tales of dealing with terrible customers and even worse, assistants who never got things right. But it was all in good jest. Because when other people were at their most frustrating, this tailor could be safe in the knowledge that they needed help. They needed their service, and as the only tailor in this coastal village for miles around, they need their help. And it's not as a sort of ego thing, but more of like letting the people be frustrated or fail and having a laugh about it. About how trivial such things as getting a new jacket made or a hat repaired in some way. Well, technically that would be the milliners across the road. And I think just being able to switch the conversation into ruminating on, like, where this person lived and those memories of that, and connect them in a sense of, like, recounting of dealing with customers who would have so much pressure on themselves to get the item they want exactly, to then have an order come in from people that are leagues and leagues above mere mundane normal people, to see the vastness in pressure, the difference in it, causes this person to laugh and to realise there's more to life than being frustrated over small things. It's the bigger things that count. When the tea is finished, bid your visitor farewell. Finally, the cup is drained, and the tailor passes it back. I wish them well on their journey, and hope that whatever they're looking for, whether it be fabric or reputation or a higher meaning, that they find it, and it's not as frustrating as it being out of stock everywhere. The clouds have lost their red tinge now, and the tailor puts back on their cloak, a beautiful fine cloak. They are so well put together now I look at them. I realise that maybe what really frustrated them was indeed their perfection in all things. Good luck, I say. And to you, they say. They start walking out of my stall, up past the stream, into the mists near the top of the mountain. So now we roll the d6 again, but we've got a +2 to it thanks to the tailor's benefit, the gift of it. We're still on the lantern path. Ooh, I rolled a 6, so that's 8. So 8 days go by. Wow, this is going to be super quick, this game. So I was on 5 days. 6 days passed. So it'll be 11, then another 2, and I get Outcast. Ooh, and their symbol indicates that we switch paths. Interesting. Alright, I'm going to roll for the weather. I got another 6, so that is the second column. And then for the specific atmospheric weather and the visitor's emotional state, was a 1. Ooh, relentless rain and exhaustion. Dear oh dear. The curtains are fully down. The last few days have been getting wetter and wetter, the clouds threatening to crack and break like an egg. So I'm not surprised when the sudden downpour appears. The chimes are gently being blown about. I've had to protect them from the wind, because otherwise the noise gets a bit too much. But when they start to chime a little more insistently, I look out of the stall and I see an individual hurrying towards me. They don't seem to have much in terms of wet weather gear. Their cloak they are wearing over their head, trying to protect themselves from the worst of the rain, has holes in it. Their feet in sort of broken sandals as they rush towards my stall. I instantly go and stoke the fire and grab a blanket or two. And as soon as they arrive, I usher them in, close down the stall sort of flap, secure it, get them close to the fire as I can, and cover them in blankets. They even, with their permission, sort of dab their hair, drenched and sodden, try and squeeze out the water in it. Their hair is so long, almost down to the bottom of their backs, and all a bit of a tangle because of the rain. I offer them a comb so that they can gently detangle it and get warm by the fire. Their eyes are grey, and they look so bloodshot and tired. This person has been walking for days and days and days. The fact they have very little with them indicates to me that they might have left in a hurry. But we don't judge here. Alright. Let's consult the questions. Alright, I'm going to roll the question. 16. Oh, wow, this is a deep question, so... What did you stop believing in? Or, what do you still believe? So I've got 2 questions, possibly. But that first one is, what did you stop believing in? People, they say. They've always relied on the kindness of strangers. They were from a big family, which fell on some hard times. So when push came to shove, they would ask anyone for any help. Never financial. It would be scraps of food, leftovers, bits of material to repair the houses, cloth bags for the children to just keep stuff in, or even just help repair clothing. You can see by the way they're holding themselves that their shoulders look tight, very similar to the last person, and how they must have held this responsibility for so long. They talk of the final straw, where one of their family passed away, and they had tried so much to care for them, look after them, try to make them comfortable when they knew their time had come. And they organised a small funeral for the person that had passed. A small gathering. Nothing fancy, just enough to mark and remember. But they overheard people talking, saying that this particular person, this outcast, who were they really? Did they put in all this effort to get something out of it? How they weren't genuine. These people that this person had trusted for so long suddenly became strangers in a moment. That maybe they only helped out because, well, they were going to get something out of it. Some sort of praise, some sort of reward. And not out of the goodness of their hearts. Not out of just helping someone for the sake of it. So, this individual just picked up the remains of whatever the buffet was, a couple of things from the home, and left, and walked, and walked, and walked. Their tiredness, they didn't want to give up, but when no one believes you, when nobody is on your side, it's so tiring to constantly keep fighting and to prove that you are who you say you are. I can tell this person's been through a lot. And I let the silence fill the space between us as they talk. They're almost sort of monotone, even monosyllabic at times. As if all the emotion, all the hope has been sucked out of them, has been chipped away by these encounters, these interactions. The best I can do is just to listen for now. What have I got? I've got a comforting brew. That's create a safe space, ease what ails you, which is dried sage. I can use that. I do have gumboot tea, which warms the soul, which could help in terms of like just warming this person up, like physically. And then I've got change the weather to the conditions of your choosing, which is the cloud tea with the mountain daisy. I think the thing is though, this feels like maybe a problem I can't fix, because there'll always be people who will say stuff like that. And I think it's just them being tired and being scared and being just exhausted. So I don't think the comforting brew would work. I certainly don't think the cloud tea would work. So I think all I'm going to do is just do the gumboot tea. That doesn't require any special ingredients. But I think what they need now is just someone to listen and to give the tea to warm the soul as they need it, just to bring them back a little bit, bring a bit of colour back in their face. Oh, I guess if I'm making the tea, I'll then ask the second question, which was, how did you know my last customer? And I think the outcast looks at me and blinks, and I explain that I notice that their cloak, although patchy in places, is of a fine quality. And recently I had an individual who is sort of very used to fine fabrics. And the outcast says, well, I asked for a donation from the tailors, and they gave me so much stuff for the children as they were growing. And for this particular memorial, this passing, whilst they could not afford to give a full sort of suit, a sort of funeral clothes for the individual who had passed, they were able to part with a shroud which had stars embroidered on it. I served them the tea, and I asked another question. I asked them question 11. Ooh, you had a rival. Who were they? A sibling, I say. You had a sibling who rivaled you for things. a distant one, one that was never home. They got out as soon as they could. The Outcast nods and starts to speak of them. It was a rivalry where there was no stakes involved, but it was almost like slights and chipping away at each other, both of them at fault, the Outcast would say. A younger sibling, with lots to prove, very successful, did incredible work. But as a result, their views and beliefs separated and disappeared until barely a letter would go by, and often the letter would be asking about things that the Outcast would have sorted because their sibling wasn't around, and arguments would happen because they hadn't been included, and so on and so forth. So a rivalry in a sense of constantly bickering, and to the point where, as the tea is drained, the Outcast takes a moment and realises and says that right at the end, they didn't feel comfortable asking the sibling for help, for fear of being chastised or told that they were wrong. They've gone from exhausted to more of a pondering sadness, a reflective state, maybe realising that they had missed an opportunity before leaving. They sort of finish and give me back their mug and say, "It's too late now." And I say it's not too late. It's never too late to repair the bridges and to let them know. And I give them a piece of paper and a pen, and I tell them to write a letter to them, and that I will find a way to send it. The Outcast says they don't know their sibling's address, and I said that doesn't matter for now. It's more of an exercise of what you would have said to them. They take some time to finish the letter. I can see there is some tear stains, but I don't comment as I go and wash and prepare the next tea. And I turn around to say goodbye and bid farewell, and they've already left. The canvas door flapping slightly in the breeze, the rain still pouring outside, and the letter to their sibling resting on my counter. I bid them farewell, even though they're not with me anymore, and I wish them luck on their journey. Alright, so we were on 13, day 13, and now the Outcast has given us the gift of changing to the dice trail instead, so we're going to switch over to that. Rolling the d6. Ah, my luck has run out. It is a 1. The sage comes to visit. And they come with a gift of a random rare ingredient. Well, let's roll for that random rare ingredient, shall we? Oh, I see now. So this is the rare ingredient table. So only if a certain visitor comes do I get to go in. It's great. Okay. So I've got, in the rare ingredients, I've got cloud dew, mountain daisy, snowdrop petals, beard lichen, stargrass, and shaggy moss. So let's roll that d6. I get a 3. Snowdrop petals is what I get. Snowdrop petals. Oh, and of course, I need to roll for the weather. So first roll is a 5, so back on that second column. And then the atmosphere and emotion. Oh, it's also another 5, so we've got gentle sunbeams and relief. Gentle sunbeams and relief. The weather has eased up since yesterday. There's a lot of rain coming down the stream and along the mountain path. But thankfully, I don't have to do too much clearing out, and whilst my canvas curtains are a bit sodden, the warmth of the fire within keeps everything dry and cosy. The chimes go, and I see another visitor approach so soon after the other. I quickly stoke up the fire and welcome them in. An older person, their face lined with age, but they breathe a sigh of relief as they get in and feel the warmth, stretching out their fingers to the fire and rubbing their hands, grateful for a chance to rest. The question I ask them is 15. Something went wrong. What happened? Interesting. And I've also got to ask them, how do they know the last person? As they sit down and I start to prepare the tea, I can see that their relief of getting out of the cold, they just go into sort of a pensive mood, and I can see their face sort of relax, but they're thinking of something. And the way their sort of eyes look out of the canvas opening, I ask the question of what went wrong and what happened. And they sort of turn to me and go, well, nothing went wrong. Just, there were mistakes I made, but I've come to terms with them. Mistakes are things that have to happen in order for us to learn, for us to grow. And sometimes holding on to such mistakes makes you twisted, turning in on yourself. And my biggest mistake would have been not asking more questions. But what I would have said to you before this journey was that I asked the wrong questions. But there's no such thing as a wrong question when you are learning. And sometimes people don't realise that. You have to ask questions, and knowing when to ask questions and why we ask questions. It's not about asking the right or wrong questions, it's just the act of asking. I regret not knowing, but at the same time, how can I regret such a thing when I didn't know? And that's not a fault of me. So nothing went wrong. I probe a little further. What specifically was the wrong question you asked? Do you love me? Was the question. And a silence falls over the stall. And what was the answer? I ask. The answer doesn't matter, says the sage. The answer didn't matter. Because it wasn't whether or not they loved me, it's whether or not I was sure that they loved me. And I wasn't sure. And as a result, I questioned it and turned twisted and bitter for fear of paranoia. And maybe it was the wrong time to ask. But sometimes it's okay to ask such things. How am I to know? If I don't ask, but at the same time, did I want to hear the answer? I guess that's the thing. Was I asking the wrong questions in the hope of getting an answer that I didn't want to hear? I sit down as the kettle boils on the fire, and I ask, how did you know my last visitor? The sage is very quiet in that moment. Like I said, I asked the wrong questions when I should have asked how they were doing. if they needed help, rather than questioning their ability and questioning their choices. When ultimately, I was more worried about my choices. I turn and I push the letter that's been lying on my counter across. I tap it. This is for you. I think the tea I should make, let's see. I think it's just going to be another gumboot tea. No special ingredient required, because, again, I don't think I need to fix this problem. This person seems to have come to terms with what they have done, and their relief of knowing is enough. So I think just a gumboot tea for this person. As I set the tea down, I ask another question. It's a 3. What are you proud of? Or, what do you regret? In brackets. I think I'm actually going to ask, what are you proud of? Because I feel like I know what they regret. They take the tea, have a quick sniff to smell the warmth scent of the gumboot, sort of clearing the sinuses somewhat. And they look at me and they say, for realising that mistakes can be made and corrected, and being aware that I wasn't always right, and that's okay to be wrong. Not many people do realise that. I'm maybe not proud, but grateful, relieved that I could see that now. They drink, and again the warmth of the gumboot brings back some pinkness to their cheeks. They stay a little while, but we don't speak too much more. They hold the letter in their hands, but they don't read it yet. They give the mug back and said that they will read the letter on the road. For privacy. Then I understand and nod. And I say farewell and good luck on your journey. So, we're on day 14. Got another d6 roll. Let's go. A 2. A hermit appears. No gift, no special symbol. What about the weather, though? Got a 2, so we go back to that first column. And then another 2. That's 3 2s in a row. Okay. So we get heavy blue fog and melancholy. After the sage has left, the fog becomes quite thick and cool. It starts to get low down on the ground and gets up to almost knee level. So it is kind of tricky to know where the stream is if you weren't paying attention. A couple of days after the sage has left, the chimes go again, and I look up from my preparations and I see another individual. Someone whose hair has overgrown slightly, a few tangles and mattedness, but otherwise an individual of good standing, their limbs seeming to be quite long and lean. It seems like they take decent care of themselves. But they sort of almost look around in surprise at seeing me. As I stand up to greet them, I notice that there is a sadness to their eyes. Almost like a little bit of a redness too. As if they've been caught crying. I offer them to come inside and make some tea for them, because it looks like they may be in need of one. Question I ask them. A 14. You went on a long journey. Where did you travel, and why? As I stoke the fire and the sparks of the cinders sort of reignite, I say they seem to be well adjusted to the outdoors. Do they travel? And they take a moment and have to clear their throat. It feels like they've not been able to speak, or they haven't needed to speak for a long time. And they, in a very soft, low voice, talk about their journey. A journey that's never really stopped. When they walked out of their home a long time ago now, after a disagreement, and decided to set their own path, not be used or dictated to by individuals. They did a journey around the world, saw many different places, different cultures. They climbed the highest mountain and swum in the depths of the ocean. They ran through cornfields. They played on sand dunes. And they did it for so long until they met someone. Someone that was beautiful and cared as much as they did for the wanderlust they felt and the drive. They wanted to see new things, so they journeyed together. They eventually had to settle down, had a small family. And then, in a blink of an eye, they were all alone. Family had grown up and left. Their partner passed due to natural causes. And suddenly, a great sadness, this sort of longing for the past, this sort of back to happier, maybe more youthful times. Because they felt like they learnt so much upon this journey, learning so much upon being a part of the wider world, and now they felt stuck, isolated, through their own choosing, perhaps, perhaps not. Their voice cracks a little as they talk about their partner. And I hold their hand and give it a squeeze. And then when they fall into silence again, I go to find a good tea for them. I think in this case, looking at my supplies, but Snowdrop Petals. Snowdrop Petals summons the last visitor back to the tea shop, fold them into the rest of the scene. I don't think that will work. Obviously, Gumboot tea is like the sort of the normal go-to. God, I wish I had distance tea, because that would have been probably worked here, but I think Comforting Brew works here. So create a safe space and ease what ails you. So I'll take up my sage. Maybe I make a big pot of this. And as I brew it, I turn back and I ask my second question of, how did you know my last visitor? The hermit sort of turns to me and says they met my last visitor on their travels. An academic who worked very long hours, constantly questioning things. They met at some conference discussing various philosophies, and whilst they disagreed on many things, the hermit appreciated the sage's wit and passion for such things, looking to find answers, because asking questions is always the right step forward. I brewed the tea, the calming tea, and I ask my final question to them, which is a 5. I say, you saw something strange. What did you see? And the hermit talks about the first time they saw their partner. It was at some beautiful soiree, a ball of some sort. And when people were introduced, the hermit, in simple but formal clothes, a simple mask to hide their identity. When they announced a particular individual, they looked and saw gorgeous, beauty upon beauty person with wild hair, red lips, a beautiful green dress. It almost for a second reminded them of an aurora, the way the dress shimmered and sparkled in the evening light. The strangeness was that they kept meeting at various balls, at various functions, and the hermit always recognised this person because of the green dress. It was so eye-catching, and they had thousands of people come to talk to them, like huge flocks of people, interested and wanted to talk to this individual, and the hermit always hung back, just marvelling in the beauty, seeing this sparkling emerald surrounded by tired, old gemstones. And just seeing this person gently dealing with the attention, until eventually the hermit got the courage to go up and talk to the sparkling emerald. There's sadness in their voice and around their eyes slowly takes away as they speak about their partner, about when they first met. They seem happier, calmer. That nostalgia, a happier nostalgia, not one of what we've lost, but of what we gained. I take the mug back, and I nod my head, and I help them to their feet as they get ready to go back upon the trail. I bid them farewell, and good luck on their journey. All right. Let's see how many more days pass between the hermit and the next visitor. Another 2. Ooh, the Trickster. So we're on day 18 now. The Trickster, who switches us back to the lantern path now. Okay, let's check out the weather then, shall we? We've got a 3, so we're back in that first column again. And now for the atmosphere and specific emotion. It's a 5. Oh, faint glowing mist and curiosity. It's an interesting one, I think. The blue fog gives away over the next couple of days to a nicer, brighter sort of mist. The sort of sun rises and hits the mist on the ground, maybe still a bit wet from when we had that rain a few days before, making everything seem shiny and bright and new. And before long, as I'm maybe setting up for an evening and keeping a watch out, the chimes go again, and a much younger person sort of flits and looks around. Could be able to be more than a teenager. Their eyes sparkling. They ask, can they come in? What have I got for sale? What is this? A load of questions. Their curiosity sort of takes over, and I'm put on the back foot a little bit, because the last couple of individuals who have been to my stall have been, well, unlike this person. They seem well equipped and well dressed for the journey, and as they come in, they make a big deal about not wanting to have any tea. They don't need it. They don't like tea. Tea's for adults. I'm like, okay, fine. If anything, they're interested by the process in which I make the different teas. So, the first question I ask them... Oh, I rolled a 19. They're full of questions for me about how do I make tea and how do I, survive the elements here in the middle of nowhere. I turn the question back on them. I ask them to tell me about their journey to my shop and how did they find themselves here. They simply talk about trying to get to the top of the mountain and how they wish to find a way to get to the top and be the highest they've ever been so they can see the whole valley and everything laid out like you see on maps. They talked about how they'd followed the brook from their home all the way up to the stream and then following it for the last couple of days, trying to get higher and higher, but never seeming to get too far. Didn't worry them at all. They had enough food, they had supplies, and a curiosity around it to keep going. Because in the end, if they don't make it to the top, that's okay, because the journey is more important than the end. They then say, about halfway into their journey, about 3 or 4 days, they heard my chimes. They heard the wind chimes on the breeze and followed the noise to the shop. Like it was fate. Like it was always meant to be. I asked them how they knew the last person that came here. They laugh and speak about how they didn't really know the Hermit, only that they'd once swindled them out of some money in a street card game of free card Monty. They talk about how they played every trick in the book and the Hermit still wasn't able to grasp it. But no hard feelings. The person did give their money back in the end. I noticed that a couple of my flowers and tea have disappeared slightly, so I do ask for them back before this person leaves. They sort of sigh a little bit and give it back, saying they were only just curious and they wanted to see more and investigate it more. I say I don't mind. It's just more about leaving it for the other people that may come and visit. What kind of tea can I give this person? Again, the cloud tea doesn't really work. The snowdrop petals with a draft of recall. I mean, that could be quite fun. And the gumboot tea, as always. Tell you what, let's do the draft of recall, so we'll use the snow petal flowers. Or snowdrop petals, sorry. And we'll do a draft of recall. And then I'll ask my other question as I give this tea to the individual. A 13. You sacrificed something. What did you give up? The trickster takes the tea, gives it a big sniff, blows on it to cool it slightly, and then takes a little sip. And their face goes from one of, unsure to one of interest and happiness, discovering that the tea is not bitter or isn't boiling hot. When I ask the question about sacrifice, they look up and there's a moment's pause and they smile quite big and they say, "Why, I sacrificed my fear, my worry, my anxiousness of ever being wrong." I know that sounds silly, but Why would I hold myself back when I could do so much? And I would love to know more. I ask, why did you sacrifice such things? And they tell a very convoluted story about meeting a deity, a god, or a fey creature that was going to help them out in some way. Or they asked for help and they said, well, the only way you can do it is to find that belief in yourself and be confident. So, as with all fey creatures that will ask for a name or for a time, the creature asked for their fear, for their anxiety, for their worries. And as a result, they have been fearless ever since. I say, is that not a worry, I guess, if you can be worried about such things, that you could never know when you're fully in danger? The trickster shrugs and says, that's all part of the fun, isn't it? To know when you're in too deep and to see how you can get out. At this point, the canvas tent door shakes and the hermit reappears. The trickster turns around and starts to laugh and sort of gets up and gives them a big hug, even though they don't really know each other. Their sort of kindled friendship over this game of Free Card Monty has delighted them in some way. The hermit, I guess, delighted that they will be joined or accompanied by an individual on the rest of their journey. I don't know how excited they are by the end time they leave. They play another few rounds of Free Card Monty, and eventually the hermit is able to pick up where the sleight of hand happens, and there's a big laugh. I don't partake, I just watch the tea. As the hermit and this trickster get up to leave, I bid them both farewell again. The hermit looking to me, nodding, that they have now found somewhere on the journey to continue some companionship, although from an unlikely source. And the trickster nods, shakes my hand. I have to ask back for my ring. They joke and give it to me back. I palm off a couple of other teas and insist that they try. They enjoyed one tea, then I'm sure they'll find some more that they can also enjoy. Alright, so we're back now on the lantern path thanks to the trickster's gift. Let's see what else we can get. I keep rolling twos. No joke, that's the fourth 2 in a row. We're now on day 20, and we have a noble, and the noble has given us the gift of a random common ingredient. Okay, is that right? Yes. Alright, let's roll for that. So again, 2 rolls here, so I've got to do which column first, so 1 to 3 or 4 to 6. That's a 1. And then I have the choice between sea salt, dry sage, quartz crystals, bird nest fungi, reindeer lichen, and bright gumdrop. 3. Oh, quartz crystal. Okay. I'll put that in my little notes. So, let's do the weather for this person then. Okay, first roll is a 5. Okay, so that's the second column. And then the actual weather and the emotional state of the visitor. It's a 4. Blue skied and clear. Calm. All right. Okay. After several days of varying weather patterns, in quick succession, I finally wake and set up the stall on a day that has blue skies as far as the eye can see. And it's not long before the chimes jingle again, and I turn, I see coming up the path a noble, an individual well-suited and well-dressed. You can see the riding boots quite high on their knees and thighs, looking a little lost, but ultimately not worried at all. And as I raise my hand in greeting, they see me and start to come forward. They shake my hand, introduce themselves, although I did never catch their names when they do so. And they ask if they are able to stop a while and just to figure out their plans, as they seem to be lost, but separated from some sort of hunting party, perhaps. As I set them down, I ask them, of course, my first question. 12. Someone did you a great kindness. What happened? Interesting. I settle down, stoke the fire, get the water ready to boil, and I notice them, again, looking into the flames, thinking. Like I said, they seem calm, so I asked them what was the great kindness that someone did them. They sort of look surprised, but then answer, why, someone showed me the way to this tea stall. They had been lost in the woods for about a day or so. Again, not too worried, because I knew the hunting team would be out for them. They were chasing some stag or some animal for some sort of festival, and then the noble got separated from their horse. The trees themselves seemed quite oppressive, and there was a fear, a little bit of a fear. But a voice came to them, told them not to fear, said to follow the sound of it, and come straight to where it leads. I asked what the voice sounded like, and the noble said they weren't sure. Babbling in some places, gabbling, laughing, lilting. I laugh a little bit and says, it sounds like you heard the sounds of my stream that's coming down the side of me, and you followed the sound of the stream to come here, where you always needed to be and would end up being here. The noble laughs. You say so. I stop, and I turn back, and I ask, how did you know my last visitor? The noble thinks for a second, and when I describe the individual of the trickster, they think for a moment, and then the noble rolls their eyes and says a quite bad curse word. The trickster is someone known to the court, someone that's always playing jokes and jabes, nothing too harmful, just an irritance. They're well-meaning, wanting to find out more. The noble says they've seen the trickster in the street doing various street card games, whereas other accomplices of the trickster would go and maybe help themselves to various bags and wallets. But they've always been handed back. I think this is an easy one in terms of tea to give. I think just the gumboot tea. I don't think I need to change the weather with the cloud tea, and that's all I have left is just the mountain daisy. So I think the gumboot tea will be good here. And then I get to ask my last question to the noble. A 7. You left something unfinished. What remains undone? The noble averts their gaze for a moment. They sigh, and they go, well, I didn't write a will. As the head of the family, the noble would have overseen various projects, would have been called upon by various admin staff, and would have been the main decision maker. But they weren't very good at keeping a log of all their decisions. It was all sort of up here, and they tapped the side of their head. All the big knowledge and decisions are up here. Probably should have put them down somewhere. I hand over the tea and I go, I'm sure they'll be fine without you. They have to be. But also, sometimes you need to step back and let people make their own mistakes and make the choices like maybe you wouldn't have made. The noble sips the tea, and the warmth spreads throughout their body. And they look and acknowledge this. And in 2 swift sips, the rest of the tea is gone. Pass it back and thank me, and ask for directions to where to go to next. I say, at the top of the mountain you have a great view of the rest of the kingdom, so maybe that's somewhere they need to go. and continue on this journey. They thank me, and they leave. I bid them farewell, and good luck on their journey. Alright, we are on day 20. On day 24, the Veiled One comes, so I need to roll a 4 or more to get there. We'll see, though. Rolling the d6. Oh, it must have heard me. That's a 1. Oh, no, we've got so many people coming to our thing. Okay, so on day 21, we have the hero who comes. Oh, well, the hero will add 2 to the result of the next day's roll. Well, isn't that wonderful? So hopefully the one after this should be the Veiled One and we can finish the game. Let's roll for the weather. First d6. It's a 2, so that first column. And then the second d6 is a 5. Oh, we got curiosity again. The day after the noble leaves, the mist returns once again, shrouding everything in a nice cooling sensation, the light bouncing off rock and stream. I'm doing various washing up. I'm very bad for washing up the mugs, and I have several around. I drink also my own tea as well whilst waiting, and I'm sort of caught off guard by the announcement of a hero that arrives at my stall. They come in, looking curiously at my curtains and the different bits of tea. They often rarely stop for anything other than rest, so for a chance just to have some tea and some conversation is a novelty. The hero themselves doesn't speak too much. Again, one-word answers as they're looking around. I invite the hero to sit by the campfire, and I ask a question. Ooh, number 4. Who will miss you? Or who will you miss? As I brew the tea, it suddenly dawns on me that these people, these visitors, obviously they have connections to each other, but also to the outer world. And so for the first time, I turn around and I ask, who will miss you to the hero? And they're kind of taken back by that question, understandably so. They say, I don't know. Obviously, throughout their travels and their adventures, they've met hundreds, if not thousands of people that they've saved or helped. So maybe them? And I say that's not really what the question is. Like, there'll be a sadness, of course, when you're no longer here, but who will miss you? And the hero thinks and ponders this whilst I brew the tea, and turns and says, this might sound silly, but my friends, my companion party. They talk of a group, a venturing guild, and that they used to go out together on missions, on contracts. There was a reunion not too long ago for the retirement of one said adventurer. And it was a joyous occasion where finally they could talk without the inconvenience of fighting monsters or saving people. They could just sit and talk and laugh and understand where people came from. How the ranger had a family and was working to support them. How the paladin had been struggling with issues of faith, but with guidance from the cleric had sort of come to an understanding. The wizards and hedge witches all have various intense conversations and debates from different points of view, but ultimately trying to understand one another. If anything, the hero says, I will miss them, and I will miss that time, but I hope that they will miss me. How did you know my last visitor? The noble, the hero says. A jousting competition. They lost. They were a bit sore about it, but we're all bad sports at the beginning. It's all about the confidence to know that you've made a mistake and own up to it. And their mistake was that their shield was too low. I did split the prize money with them. I think this is where I'm going to use my Cloud Tea. I want to change the weather to conditions of my choosing, using the Mountain Daisy. I think I'm going to give them the Cloud Tea, and I'm going to change the atmosphere from faint glowing mist and curiosity to warm golden light and hope. I think that's a nice transition. And I use up my Mountain Daisy because I feel like this is important. I do have the quartz crystal still, and that can be... What can that be made into? A memory draft. Relive a memory in vivid detail. Oh, well, keep that one for the last person, I think. And then let's ask our final question to this person. An 8. You hid something. What did you hide? Ooh, okay. What did they hide? The hero finishes their cup of tea, drains it, satisfied. And as the mist clears away behind them, to have this gold light almost bathe them as they get up and say thank you, I ask the question and they sort of smile, like a little secretive smile. I hid a cache of gold coins, and I left a note on my desk to be for anyone who could find it. They deserve it. I made a little treasure hunt, because there's no point in going on quests yourself without creating a side quest after you leave, right? I said, how difficult is it to find such a cache? And the hero laughed and said, oh, just, the odd dungeon, a couple of puzzles. They'll be fine. I say farewell to the hero and bid them good luck on their journey. Alright, I think, because I've got a +2, no matter what I roll on the dice, I'm going to get the Veiled one, because we're on day 21. So even with a 1 +2, that's 3 days. So let's see what we get, just in case. Yeah, it's another 2, but we're on the Veiled one now. So day 24. When days reach 24 or more, the Veiled one arrives. Follow the question ritual, and as they depart, ask a final question of what happens next. Okay. Well, let's roll for the weather for the final time. It's on 4, so that's the second column. And then... Oh, it's 6, so it's still that warm golden light still. Oh, lovely. That's very nice. So I don't know when this individual arrives at my stall. The days pass, and the light's still golden, and I feel it. I think back of the people who have been over the last 24 days. A tailor, an outcast, a sage, a hermit, a trickster, a noble, and a hero. And as I turn around to stoke the fire once more, the Veiled One is already sat down at my stall. No chimes. And I realise, now that I think of it, no sounds from the outside, no babbling brook, no bird song, no breeze through the tent flaps, so to speak. And seeing them just sat there, face covered. I feel the sense of hope entering the tea stall. I asked the question, what was the great lesson of this life? The Veiled One does not answer. So I answer it. The greatest lesson of this life is that people come from all walks of life, different points of views, different chips on different shoulders. And we need to listen and hear all sides and how they feel, certainly at a time so crucial as their passing. I have met 7 individuals over the last 24 days, each of them coming to me for a different reason. The greatest lesson I've learnt is to listen and to hear them, regardless if they want help or not. It is not my job to fix these people before they move on. Rather, it is for me to learn from them and help others who are in similar situations. I ask, how did you know the last visitor? And the Veiled One does not answer. I know how the Veiled One knows the last visitor of the hero. I know how they know the noble. I know how they know the Trickster, the Hermit, the Sage, the Outcast and the Tailor. And I know how they know me as well. And I think, realising this, I will brew my final tea as a memory draft, using the quartz crystal, a memory draft which would relive a memory in vivid detail. And I offer it to the Veiled One, and they do not drink it. Or rather, they motion for 2 cups rather than 1. And I remember of my life before the tea stall, before coming here. A life full of emotion and happiness and sadness. A life full of joy and emotion on various scales, of quiet moments, of bursting euphoria. A life lived. And now, another life, another path coming to an end. Six. You lost something valuable. What did you lose? This question is asked to me from the Veiled One. As I sit and I drink the tea, I lost my courage. I lost my confidence. Little by little, chip by chip, the world was cruel and harsh, until I was just a shell of myself, with the only thing that could keep me grounded or keep me safe was giving myself a cup of tea before every big moment, for every time change happened, or sadness or tragedy. I always turned to tea. I lost my ability to be strong. The Veiled One motions for me to get up and to leave the tent with them. Let's try it now. Let's go find your courage. The final question that I ask of the Veiled One, but probably myself as well, is, what happens next? Well, it's quite simple, really. I get up, I put out the fire, I leave a note saying, take care of this shop, and I walk out hand in hand with the Veiled One, up the mountain, into the mists, so I can get a good view of the valley below. Wow. What a good game. The Last Tea Shop by Spring Villager. I think that was good. I do wish I didn't get so many 2s. Yeah, I did get way too many 2s. I did think this game was going to be over in like half an hour because I rolled like a 6 and a plus and then got loads of 2s and 1s at the end. But I think that was good. It was nice to reflect. And I hope it's come out okay. And I did change the ending a little bit. I don't know if you've noticed. I just feel with something like the Veiled one, you know that it's come for you rather than the other way round. But there you go. What a good game. The What Am I Rolling podcast was created, recorded, and edited by me, Fiona Howat. This episode's player was me, Fiona Howat. This episode's RPG was The Last Tea Shop, a solo journaling game about tea and conversation. You can find out more information about The Last Tea Shop and grab your own copy on the Spring Villager's itch.io store. That's springvillager, all one word, .itch.io. The theme music was 8-Bit March by Twin Musicon of twinmusicon.org, licensed under a Creative Commons 4.0 license. If you want to find out more about the podcast, check out the website. That's www.wairpodcast.com. Fancy getting in touch? Email the podcast at whatamirollingpodcast@gmail.com. Finally, follow the podcast on social media. We're at WAIR_podcast on most sites, so follow along for the latest news on upcoming episodes. All the relevant links are in our link tree in the show notes, including a link to our Discord, so come join us there. And remember, adventurers need not apply.